And it's my privilege to introduce you to a good friend. Jeremy and I, we have a growing friendship. He's become my mentor and mentor to some of us as national leaders. I think the first time we met was like 25 years ago or something, right? Yeah, so he's like 300 years old. Jeremy, I've come to know him as really a man after God's own heart. As we've been sharing lives, he has planted 2 vineyards in his lifetime and been one that has really raised up leaders and has seen fruitfulness in his ministry. He came out of the corporate world as a businessman, and the Lord called him into ministry. And he was a close friend with John Wimber, whom some of us know, and who was the founder of our movement. And also he's been serving along the other leaders in the UK leadership. So please give a very warm welcome to Jeremy Cook. Please come up, Jeremy.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I last did a conference like this here in the Nordic 19 years ago, so I'm looking forward to another invitation in 2044. My name is Jeremy. I'm what I describe people. I introduce myself as a dinosaur of the vineyard. I'm kind of lumbering around, due to become extinct fairly soon. And I've had friends in the Nordic here for many years, and I've always loved coming here. You're just wonderful people, and I just love being here. And so it's a real privilege to be here. And some of you know that my friend Jim Wimber and I, we've been doing a lot of work together in the Ukraine. And particularly you guys have just been so good and gracious to that country and the people and what have you. But in taking all the humanitarian aid. But I want to tell you a brief story. This is just to prove that Jim and I aren't quite as smart as we could be. We went into the Ukraine in March this year, and there's myself, Jim, and another pastor, a vineyard pastor in the States, in the car. And we get to the Polish border. I mean, it's freezing cold. It's about -10. And we're on the border just waiting. There's no other cars there, just us, for 2 hours, and nothing happens. And then I just had an idea, and I said to, hey guys, I said, how many years have you been in pastoral ministry? So they gave me the figure, and it ended up that between the 3 of us, we had been in pastoral ministry for 100 years. So I said, why don't we have a prayer meeting? So they went, oh, that's a good idea. Why didn't we think of that? So we prayed, and it was we had this phenomenal 3, 4, 5 minute prayer meeting, and 10 minutes later we were through. I always want to just, I've learned a few things as I've grown old in my life, and I want to just share 3 of them. And the first is this, that one of the things that I have learned over the years is I have learned to love the church in all its shapes and forms. You know, as long as they love Jesus Christ, then I love them. And the reason I love the church is for a variety of reasons, but the main reason is it really is the hope of the world. The local church is the hope of the world. And the local church is what Jesus Christ is coming back for. And then will be a new heaven and a new earth. And that will be formed out of the church. And so if the church is all the church is at the heart of God, then it's in the heart of me as well. Secondly, I love the vineyard. I don't think it's perfect. I don't always agree with every decision it's taken, but it is my home. It is where the Lord has called me, and it's where I serve. And I remember many years ago, I'd only just become a Christian. I'll talk a little bit about it in a minute. And my wife, I'd been a Christian for a few months, and my wife insisted that we go to this conference with this man called John Wimber. So we go to this conference, and eventually this rather large, dare I say, fat American waddled on the stage. He slammed his Bible down and said, let me tell you about the kingdom of God. And he talked about the kingdom of God. And then he did a ministry time, and I was hooked. I just thought, this is where I'm going to live. This is where I'm going to live. And the third thing that I have learned, and it's this, the Lord is still in control. The Lord is still in control. He knows the beginning from the end. And as I thought about this conference and I prayed it, and Per Christian spoke to me, and I just prayed about it, and all the words I got was fresh wind and fresh fire. And I really hope that that's what the Lord does. And so my teaching is not really, I'm not taking you through the Bible. I'm going to teach you really practical stuff, if I may. It's based on the Bible, and hopefully it is biblical. If it's not, I'm sure you'll tell me. And I want to I want to talk on three things. Number one, the centrality, the necessity of leadership. Leadership is so important in the church. I want to talk about vision and communication of vision and getting it and losing it and getting it again. And I want to talk about what I call momentum, that is keeping the church moving and pushing it on. And if you're here today and you're young and you've got special seats, it's wonderful to see you here. I am deeply, deeply, deeply envious of you because you have two things that I no longer have. You have a body that works, which I no longer have, and you have a future which you can change the world. I mean, I really mean it. You can change the world. With you and God, nothing is impossible. And I really just, I really do envy that. I do envy young people. I don't envy some of the other stuff, but I mean, anyway. But just let me just tell you a little bit about my story so you kind of know who I am. At 17 years old, I went to a party. And I walked in the room, and there was a girl there. I took one look at her, and I fell in love with her. And we eventually then we eventually get married. And I was a very ambitious man. I wasn't a Christian. She had a kind of nominal Catholic background, but I soon got rid of all of that stuff, and brought her back to being a good old atheist. And I remember telling my mother the next morning at breakfast, I said, I think I've found my future wife. And my mother, she nearly choked. And anyway, so sadly, Elaine passed away 3 years ago. But I mean, we were together 51 years, so we kind of made it work. But we roll on now, and I'm 31 years old, so I've known her for 14 years. And I am now successful in business. I've sort of risen to the top of my profession. I'm making a lot of money, and I've just bought this beautiful new big house and this really expensive car. And I come home one evening and I walk through the door. And normally when I walk through the door, my wife greets me. She says, "You're late. One of the children's screaming. Go and sort them out. Blah blah blah." Anyway, I mean that was just normal. So I come home this night and I walk in the door. And I look across, and there's the dining room, like a candlelit dinner sat out. And I'm thinking, have I come to the right house? And then my wife appears, and she's got her best dress on, and she's beautifully made up. I'm thinking, this is weird. And I'm thinking, you've smashed up my new car, haven't you? And then I thought, no, she hasn't, because I've just driven home in it. And so I sit down, and I sat there having dinner, you see, and she says, "I've got something to tell you, darling." So I said, "Oh, what's that?" She said, "I've met someone." So I said, "Oh, who have you met?" She said, "I've met Jesus." Now, just pause it a minute. Now, I am in the music business. My job is negotiating deals. So no body language, no nothing. You just know how to, even if you're dying inside, you just say, stay calm. So I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, "Where did you meet him?" She said, "I met him down at the local church." So I said, "Well, it figures if he's in town, that's where he'd hang around, you know." And she says, "No, you don't understand it." She said, "I have met Jesus." I said, "No, I don't." I said, "I really don't. I think it's crazy." And I kind of thought it would end our relationship, if I'm really honest about it. Anyway, cut a long story short, she does everything possible to evangelize me. I mean, she drags me along to church, and there they are with their kind of open-toed sandals and their beards, and that's just the women. And no, sorry, I didn't say that. It's streamless, isn't it? Oh, sorry. They were just full of these beautiful ladies. Anyway. She drags me along, and I am resistant. And we're sat there, and she'll just read me bits from the Bible. "What do you think of that?" And I said, "Not much at all." But she would say one thing to me. She'd play a trump card that got me every time. She would just look me in the eye and just say, "Do you know, Jeremy, Jesus loves you." And it did something in me. I don't know what it did, but it did something in me. Anyway, she was always trying to set me up, and she set me up for this event, this sort of dinner party, which is full of Christians. Anyway, I go to this dinner party, and I've had enough of these Christians because all they're doing is just talking about Jesus the whole time. So I go in the other room, and the guy who was the leader of the church, he was actually an Anglican bishop, he walks up to me, and he said, young man, he says, God has just spoken to me about you. And I thought, oh, poor man, he's drawn the short straw and they've just like sent him through, you know. So I thought, humour the boy. So I just said, and what did he say? And he said, do you want to give your life to Christ tonight? I said, yes, please. In my head, I was going like, don't do this. This is stupid. This is like the dumbest decision I'll ever make. No, don't. And this voice goes, yes, please. And no sin, no cross. You know, I didn't know any of that stuff. And I went home, and it was the same as the night I met Ealine. I couldn't sleep because I knew I'd fallen in love. And that's kind of my story. And so what I want to do this evening is I want to say that actually falling in love with Jesus is a really, really exciting thing. And I never wanted to be a leader. I used to tell the Lord that I didn't want to I didn't want to go into any form of Christian leadership. I didn't certainly want to go into any sort of church planting. And I certainly never wanted to return to my hometown where I was brought up. I used to tell the Lord that. And of course, what does the Lord do? Sends me there to plant a church. So then I thought, I just need to tell the Lord I don't ever want a Ferrari. But it didn't work. It didn't work, I'll tell you. What I want to do this evening is I want to just, and maybe we won't get through all of this section tonight, but during the course of this conference we'll get through it. I want to talk to you about the vital and central role of leadership in the church. It is so, so crucial. And let me just give you an illustration. In the summer of 1940, after the British Army had retreated from Dunkirk back to the UK, we were, as a nation, we were on the edge of defeat. Hitler was winning. And they had a huge German air force. They had more airplanes, they had better pilots, and so on and so forth. And they hoped that they would bomb England into submission, they'd invade us, and the war would be over by the end of the year. And Goering, who was head of the Luftwaffe, went to Hitler, and he said, Führer, we have more planes, more pilots, more ammunition, and more bombs than they have in England. And Hitler turned round and said, yes, but you don't have Winston Churchill. Leadership is everything. He took the nation of England from utter defeat against all odds to victory. That's what leadership does. And leadership is and churches rise and fall on their leadership. No church grows bigger than its leaders, and therefore, as leaders, particularly you young guys, get this stuff under your belt. The reason I trained as a leader was I just used to sneak into leadership conferences. I wasn't a leader, but I just used to like to hear how to do this stuff. And leadership, I know, is a spiritual gift. Romans 12 talks about that one. But it's like a precious stone. It needs polishing. It needs cleaning. It needs knocking into shape. And so we need to be aware of that. And leaders change everything. Leaders take place of defeat to a place of victory. And I want to share this evening 10 important things that leaders do. Oh, we'll do some of it maybe tomorrow. Number one, they are secure, self-disclosing people, not just shallow professionals. They have the ability to relax. They have the ability to have fun, be honest, be self-disclosing. They're not some professional person who's the pastor. I used to hate it in my church when people used to call me pastor. I used to say, my name is not pastor. My mother gave me the name Jeremy. My mother actually named me after a frog. She did. Do you have Beatrix Potter over here? No, you don't have it. No. Well, anyway, Beatrix Potter. There's a Jeremy Fisher and a Peter Rabbit. And so I'm called Jeremy after the frog, Peter after the rabbit, and George after her father. That's the sort of family I come from. But they have the they have the ability to be honest and self-disclosing. 1 Thessalonians 2:8 talks about, we loved you so much that we desired to not only share the gospel with you, but our lives with you. It's based on a sense of security. I'm approved and called by God. And the calling is like the tug of a kite, when the kite's in the air, the tug, it never goes away. You can just feel it pulling the whole time. And that's what the calling of God is like. And they've been drawn into God's purposes. And they're not driven by ambition or success. They're driven by this delight to obey and please the Lord. A man called Lance Pitlock, who used to pastor the Anaheim Vineyard, he said this. He said, pastors... It's true. Pastors are among the most insecure of all Christians. He said, you ask them how they are, and they answer in given terms of how busy I am or how big my church is. And it's true, isn't it? But, it's okay to have a big church and it's okay to have a small church. The important thing is that you are following the Lord. And so in that sense, they have clear boundaries. They understand the difference between being accountable and disclosing. And so as a leader, I was always very accountable. I'd always explain my decisions. And I would be very disclosing as far as it was possible. I mean, I wouldn't disclose everything, but I would disclose everything to anybody who was overseeing or leading me. I kept no secrets from them, but obviously from the church you do it. So they are secure, well-adjusted individuals. They are willing to take responsibility. Something in them goes into any situation and says, someone needs to lead this thing. They set the culture and the climate. There was a Supreme Court judge in America called Alex M. Saunders, and he said this: you must never forget that what you do not value will not be valued. That which you do not remember will not be remembered. That which you do not change will not be changed. And that which you do not do will not be done. And that's what leaders do. They remember, they change. He went on to say that any form of leadership has high levels of ownership and the buck stops with you. And this is what he went on to say. As responsibility is passed on to you as you live the rest of your life, it will not do to assume that someone else will bear the major burdens, that someone else will demonstrate the key convictions, that someone else will take care of the poor, that someone else will protect civil rights, that someone else will enforce the law, that someone else will preserve the culture, transmit the value, and maintain civilization, defend freedom. You need to do it as a leader. And leaders are in that sense of taking responsibility. They don't get upset over small things. If you've been in any leadership for any sense of time, whatever, short or long, you will have been upset. You'll have people who offend you, you'll have people who insult you, you'll have people who criticize you. That's part of the job. But leaders don't. They're not moody. They're even-tempered. They're not prone to mood swings. They're not draining to be with. They don't blame shift. They're not easily offended. They handle disappointment and disillusionment in a safe way. It's part of the job. They identify problems and they identify solutions. But more than that, under this one, they have the ability to persevere. And one of the definitions of a perseverance is the ability to carry out a resolution long after the mood in which it was made has gone. My father, as a kid, my father would be locked up for I don't want to believe, but my father used to be really quite tough on me. He was very loving. He was a kind of really gracious, loving man, but he made sure I grew up tough, and he used to set me up into situations which I just had to kind of like draw on my strength. But it was the best lesson he could ever have taught me. The great writer T.H. Huxley says this: perhaps the most valuable result of all education is the ability to make yourself do the thing that you have to do when it ought to be done, whether you like it or not. This is the first lesson that ought to be learned. However early in man's training begins, it's probably the last lesson they learn thoroughly. You've got to be able to do first things first. Number 3, they're always ready to learn and make mistakes. They have the ability to grow as the job demands it. And they're constantly looking to grow. John Maxwell, the Christian leader, says there are 4 things that leaders have. They have the ability to communicate where change is needed for growth. They have the ability to communicate the change that's necessary. They have the ability to communicate the cost of that change, and they have the ability to offer the challenge of that change. That's what leaders do. And they're inquisitive. They're constantly asking questions. I mean, as a young man, I didn't realize I was doing it, but as a young man, I would always look for guys that were, further on in their career or further on in business. And I would corner them and just ask them all these questions. And that's what leaders do. They ask questions, and they ask you questions. What do you see? What am I doing wrong? Because they want to create a really sort of trusting and secure atmosphere where you're able to sort of have the back and forth of communication. Number 4, they understand the biblical principles of leadership. There's a quick slide here. Can we have the first slide? Is that it? Coming up, first slide. Oh, there we go. That's it, yeah. So the difference between people managing and people leading is this. Management do right things. Do things right. Leaders do right things. Management is about performance. Leadership is about change. Management is about today, and leaders always focus on the future. Their future focus. What does tomorrow look like? And when we talk about vision tomorrow, that's one of the abilities of a leader is to paint a picture of tomorrow that that's able just to capture your heart. The truth is, it's getting the mind of the Lord for a given time and a given people. It's the ability to envision these people with credibility, appropriate to your leading ability, to plan and to adjust the plan and to execute the plan. And if you've been a leader for any length of time, it's the ability to ask forgiveness. Because if you're a good leader, you will constantly make mistakes. And you will constantly need to go back to the people and just say, look, I'm terribly sorry. I thought that was the Lord. It wasn't. I'm so sorry. Because that's how you keep credibility. And, the reality is that we lead out of hearing the Lord, communicating the vision, modeling the solution. We understand our weaknesses and limitations, and so therefore you surround yourself with people who can do things that you can't do. And that doesn't make you feel secure. It does the opposite to me. I love having people around me that are much cleverer and smarter and capable than I am, because it makes me look good. They think, gosh, look at him. He's very clever. He must be really clever. I'm not as dumb as a bag of hammers, but that's not the issue. The issue is I know what my weaknesses are, and they are many and they are considerable. Number 5, they are able to integrate spirituality with rationality. There is an expression in the UK, and I'm sure it's not true over here in the Nordic countries, that most Christians leave the brain at the door when they walk into church. And it's very rude, isn't it? It's true. Here's the secret of leadership. The main thing is to keep the main thing you got it. That's the art of growing churches. And churches, according to John Wimber used to tell us, churches are like playing football but without goals or a ball, so that no one knows a way to measure how productive or successful you are. And that's true, Churches don't grow rhythmically, they grow arrhythmically, they go in spurts and plateau and decline, and that's how they grow. And they go through growth and non-growth periods. But the reality is that we need to do analysis and we need to measure stuff. And people say, oh no, but that's not spiritual. Yes, it is. It's absolutely. So I never set growth goals, but I certainly set workforce goals. And sometimes you say, well, how many people are in home groups? Are our Sunday mornings growing? Are our kids' ministry growing? Is our poor ministry growing? Is our giving growing? Is our leadership training going, etc., etc., etc.? You just need to measure these things, because what will happen is you measure them is you'll get a picture. And that picture will show you what's happening in the church. And so leaders are people who want to be constantly analysing and thinking things through. And in doing that, they take care of the skeleton of the church, and the rest of the church will be healthy. And when I was pastoring, and I haven't been pastoring for a few years now, but passed the church over, but I used to say there are 4 things, Jeremy, that I am responsible for in this church. Number 1, I'm responsible for leadership and training leaders. Number 2, I'm responsible for the vision. Number 3, I'm responsible for gathering and evangelism. And number 4, I'm responsible for discipline and governance. Now, I had people that looked after all of those, but those were the 4 pulses that I always kept my finger on. I wanted to know that leaders were getting trained and trained well. I wanted to know that the vision was clear to everybody. I wanted to know that we were gathering and we were evangelizing all the time, and that never stopped. And I wanted to know that we had good discipline, discipleship, and governance, because I didn't want anybody messing up and anybody going to prison. And so I would measure and analyze things, and it's worse. Paid pastoral staff hate being measured. But it's the important thing to do. It's a really useful tool for them. Okay, number 6, they constantly affirm Jesus and the scriptures. It's just important we teach from the scriptures. It's just important that we know the scriptures. I have made this habit. I've done it, I think, now for about 35 years. But I read the New Testament through once a year, and I read the Old Testament once a year, and the New Testament Psalms I read through twice a year, and I've done that for, I think, probably about 35 years. Why? Because I just need to know the scriptures. And though I do it less these days, but certainly when I was pastoring, I set myself a goal of reading 2 theology books a month. So in a year, you'd read 24 books. In 10 years, you've read 240 books. And that way you're just constantly, you're improving your theology, you're constantly getting into the scriptures, and you're constantly understanding it. And so we need to be people who constantly affirm the scriptures. Number 7, this is really important. They understand and appreciate an affirming of other people. And I used to say in our church, one of the secrets of leadership is affirm, affirm, affirm. People don't want to be criticized. Encouragement releases energy and vision. You know that when you compliment someone or when you receive a compliment, that it does something to you. When you hear, they're great at that, they do it well. Somehow it releases energy in you. I'm terribly English and so self-deprecating, so I hate praise and I hate compliments. It's just like, no, we don't do that in England. We're just weird. But encouragement is essential. It releases energy and vision. And I say to people in the church, I say, what are the joys that you're experiencing? What are the headaches you're experiencing? Can I help you? What do you need to do your job better? There's an African proverb, and it just says this: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go a long way, go together. And it's true in a church. You want to just constantly, as a leader, you need to be pulling people together. You need to make the maximum use of Sundays. I used to have a plan for Sundays, and I used to get into the habit of having a plan. And always for me, the most important people on a Sunday usually were, who are the newcomers? Who are the new faces? Because I'm going to make a beeline for that. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to spend time with them. I'm going to make an effort with them. And I would get into the habit of always in finding them. I'd always take this mantra in my own mind that nobody is unimportant, nobody's imposing on me. I'm just going to give myself to the people. And so I would do that every Sunday. Because what happens, as you well know, is all the old timers want to come and talk to you. And I say to them, what's wrong with the rest of the week? Why has it got to be today? I've got other things to do. And they got the hang of it in the end. But, it's very interesting. My wife was very introverted and basically quite shy. So to do that, she really had to force herself to do it. And because she forced herself to do it, she was the best in the church at doing it. She just trained herself to do it. Number 8, very important, they keep clarifying the vision. They're constantly explaining what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. I used to say to our church, I'm just an intelligent parrot. I'm just repeating. I'm constantly giving them the better picture. I'm constantly just trying to, I'm trying to give you a context. You might be vacuuming the carpet, or you might be making the coffee, but you're all part of this machine, this group of people, this organism that is trying to get the city saved. It all counts. The pay's the same. It all counts. And sometimes you just need a really clear way of doing it. Can you just put the next slide up, please, the hand? And in our church, I really sort of was struggling to have a vision thing. And one day the Lord gave me this. So here's a hand. And I used to put my hand up and say, right, this finger is servant evangelism. We are going to go out and be sowing into the community, giving away cups of coffee, praying for the sick on the streets, whatever it is. We're just going and just dropping seed all the time. The second one is personal evangelism. Most of you will know that 80% of people come to Christ through personal evangelism, through relationship. And it's been the same for, I guess, forever, but certainly ever since I've known it. Number 3, this finger is equipping the people. You've got to be training leaders and equipping the leaders, equipping the saints to do the job. And number 4, Paul, the apostles, the council said, do not forget the poor. The Lord loves to the poor. Those who give to the poor lend to the Lord. Here's the key. There's your hand, right? No thumb. What does the hand do? Nothing. You have a thumb, and your hand works. And I used to say to them, prayer is everything. Prayer changes everything. And then every week I used to try and find stories to do that. They plan their work and they work their plan. They know what they're doing. They know what needs to be done. They develop goals. They develop plans. They develop strategy. I won't do it now, but, we can put it up in a minute. But there's this thing called the Eisenhower Matrix. I should put it up, because if you would, please. This absolutely saved my life. It comes from an expression that General Eisenhower said, and he said this: I have 2 kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent. And that's this matrix, and I won't explain it now, I can explain it, come and talk to me, but it's really about identifying those things that are important and not urgent. And what it shows you, once you do that, and there are ways of doing that, once you start to identify the important but not urgent, the urgent and not important virtually disappears, and you spend your life doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. Number 10, they are always looking for leaders to train. They're always looking around. Who's a leader? Who's not a leader? Who's emerging as a leader? And when I planted my church, I deliberately made it a church for young people. And so when my church, I don't know how big, when it was several hundred, the average age of the church was only about 30 years old, maybe even younger at times. Because I focused on young people. Why? Because I took the view that if I could get hold of people at that age and that stage, I could influence them to be leaders that, like you guys, that could go and change the world. So I would be constantly looking for leaders to train. And I'm sure most of you have done the whole, IRTDMN IRTDMN. Identify, recruit, train, deploy, monitor, nurture. Thank you. Is that gin? No. I don't drink gin. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. And so I was always looking, and you should always be looking for people to train, whether it's conferences, seminars, whatever. In the UK, we've got what I call our college and our pathway now, and it's really transformed leadership training in the UK. It really has. And it's not rocket science because, basically you get them to you just invite them along and say, come with me and watch me lead, and then you have him or her lead with you, and then you have him or her lead and you watch, and then you have him and her lead alone. I mean, that's very, very simple. That's effectively what Jesus did. And you just need to constantly follow up with encouragement. You just need to look around at who's emerging, who do you click with. It's the most exciting part, is just identifying leaders. And what's so wonderful about it is that I have two sons, and I love it when they're successful. I love it when they do things right. I couldn't care less what I do. I love it when they do things right. And it's the same spiritually. It is just the most wonderful thing to find leaders, to build them up and disciple them and release them. It's just crucial in the kingdom of God. And all God's people said,